Achilles injury.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've asked this before. What is do you know the URL for the Facebook Magic page?
I'll always just search Orlando Magic on Orlando Sentinel.
Depends on if someone's logged into.
And last night's final score was 89-82.
All right.
Alright, sit tight guys. We are almost there. Just making sure we're live on Facebook.
I am going to go to 3 Twitter questions pretty quick, just a heads up on that.
Oh, well, okay, well just.
Not immediately, but pretty quick.
Okay.
Char-
Give me a minute to.
Charles, this is why you are the best in the business. You are truly gifted.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're good to go. Can you guys see your beautiful mugs on the screen there?
Welcome to Orlando Magic Now. I'm Charles King here with Josh Robbins, the Orlando Magic beat writer for the Orlando Sentinel. We're going to talk about the Orlando Magic for the next, 15, 20, half hour, depending on how things go, Josh. And
Thank you.
You were at the game last night. Wasn't it was a win for the Magic, but not the best showing. An 89-82 win over the Pelicans. Pelicans were without Anthony Davis, without really 3 starters, and it was a tough win to pull out for the Magic at home.
Right, that's a game the Magic should have won and probably should have won going away, and yet they struggled. They trailed by 1 point for a very brief time early in the fourth quarter. They never quite pulled away. If it weren't for several players, Magic wouldn't have won that game. DJ Augustine, Damian Rudesh, Nikola Vucevic down the stretch. That could have been a massive upset for the Magic, and certainly that was an unimpressive performance from them.
And some familiar things with the team. Off to a slow start at the beginning, a really bad third quarter, a poor offensive performance from the team, and these are things that is starting to become a pattern.
All true. All true. The offense right now is the biggest concern. The defense is ranked 15th in the league in points allowed per possession. Don't get too excited about that, I would advise the fans, because they've had a few opponents there that are just terrible offensive teams. I'm thinking specifically about the Philadelphia 76ers, thinking specifically about the Pelicans last night without Anthony Davis. The Magic just are not a good-looking team right now. There's no other way to describe it. That's simply the facts.
Yeah, 5-7 on the year, which is 11th in the East. And of those 5 wins you mentioned, a win over Philadelphia. They were down 18 points in that game. The win over the Pelicans without Anthony Davis, as you mentioned. They beat the Wizards without John Wall.
Right.
It's not as if the Wizards are a good team this year either. The Wizards also struggling. And then a win over Sacramento. So 4 of those 5 wins, not so great. The one game where the Magic seemed to really put it all together was on the road at Oklahoma City, where Serge Ibaka had perhaps a career night. Really, of the 5 wins, I think that's the only one they can really hang their hat on, and they shot the ball fairly well.
To call that a quality win is absolutely accurate. That was as quality a win as you get, going on the road in a hostile environment, playing against a superstar, Russell Westbrook, who was absolutely at the top of his game. So that was an impressive victory without doubt, without question.
After the game last night against the Pelicans, Aaron Gordon said that this team maybe just is missing a want, is what he said, which seems incredibly concerning if the team can't find the desire this early in the season.
True. I don't think that there's any question about that. You're correct.
And maybe the Oklahoma City game was the one game maybe where there might have been some want. I mean, Serge Ibaka goes back home. Victor Oladipo was involved in a trade with the team. Maybe there were some things to motivate the team there. I don't know. I'm just kind of reaching for what could make this team want.
You are reaching, but you're not reaching very far. If I were to draw an analogy, it would be like you trying to use that pencil to kind of poke me in the left arm. You wouldn't be reaching very far. All true. I found it, if I were a Magic fan, I'd find it very disconcerting that the Magic played as well as they did against Oklahoma City and then laid an egg the next night against the Indiana Pacers. Granted, they were moving a time zone east on a back-to-back. It's not easy, but that performance in Indiana was downright pathetic.
And the Magic fans are frustrated as well. We got Josh asked for questions from you on Twitter. So
I did. And I want you to thank the nice people who asked us questions this time.
Okay, well,
please, I request.
I am thanking each and every one of you who did respond, and we're going to show that appreciation by trying to address every single one of the questions that you got on Twitter. So let's go ahead and get to the first one here. I think this is kind of shows where the Magic fan mindset is right now. This is from, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. We'll say his name is Evan. Can you tell me why I hate myself? I must, since I chose to be a fan of this team. I think that shows a little bit of the negativity that's going on out there. Let's get to the next question, see if we have a more specific question for you, Josh, that you can have a chance in answering.
You're not going to answer that question? Any thoughts?
That's Jordan Crumbine there, who's masterminding our
prodding
show.
Josh
Thank
for
you.
a response.
Evan, I think maybe the reason why you hate yourself is because Charles won't try to pronounce your last name.
You want to give it a shot?
Yes, man. I think I will give it a shot, and I think it was Puhalco.
Okay.
Nope.
No,
Pucalho. Pucalho. That's my
Pucalho.
guess.
I like Pucalho.
Evan, if you would please be kind enough to DM me a phonetic correct pronunciation of your last name, how it's pronounced, I'd appreciate it, because I'm wondering. My last name, by the way, is pronounced Robbins. His name is King, and Jordan's is Crumbine. So,
Yeah.
correct?
That's, yes.
All right.
Spot on.
So,
We're very phonetic here today.
that's correct. And the gist of Evan's comment, and thank you, Evan, for contacting us and for the spelling, the pronunciation of your last name, I hope. Look, they're not an easy team to watch right now. Watching as a dispassionate observer, I have to acknowledge that the last two games, the game in Indiana, the game last night here in Orlando against the Pelicans, were very displeasing to the eye.
Yeah.
No question. It's
Yeah,
all true. I don't.
And you talked about the offensive struggles, and that's a big part of it. When the team can't get any buckets, it is kind of painful to watch. So we were talking about the Magic with their 5 wins and how 4 of those wins aren't exactly convincing big wins. We have another Twitter question here. It's from Mohammed. It says, how unimpressive are these wins? I know it's super early, but by season's end, if things don't improve, what happens? Or maybe if not even by season's end, if things don't improve, what happens, Josh?
I don't think they make any sort of major structural change within the team's hierarchy if they falter. I think it's very difficult to make a change during the season. I don't think it really gets you anywhere.
When they've talked about, this is a playoffs or bust season, so that's really where the expectations are.
Yes, that's the language they've used, or at least Evan Fournier used the phrase playoffs or bust, but remember, this is Orlando, not Boston or New York or Chicago, where the fans really hold a team, or Philadelphia, hold a team accountable. If the team winds up well out of the playoff chase like it did last year, I think that the DeVos family would take a very serious look at what's happening in the basketball operations department. Because it would seem to indicate that the team has not made any progress. I do think that would occur, yes.
Now, statistically, there's a lot of concerning things. We'll go over some of the team stats that are concerning, and I'd like to go through some of the individual players on the Magic roster and kind of talk about how each of them are performing, and we'll get to that in just a minute. One more Twitter question while we're here. This is from Andrew. It says, what's been going right and what's been going wrong the last few games for the Magic? What's Orlando's formula for winning? We talked about what's gone wrong. Perhaps an opportunity here to talk about some of the things that the Magic have done well and what you see is a formula. In what way can this Magic team win games?
Well, Magic need to be a defensive team. You don't have to be one thing and not the other, but at the bare minimum, this team's going to have to defend because they can't outscore anyone. The Oklahoma City game, I think, was an anomaly. A pleasant
119 points.
Correct, against a team that, as of today, ranks 6th in points allowed per possession. Now, if they could beat that team consistently, well, there will be no question about the Magic making the playoffs. However, that was a great question. I'd also like to thank Mohammed, because you didn't thank him, for his prior question. What is the formula for winning? Well, it has to start defensively, and the Magic are starting to make some modest improvements against some teams that, quite frankly, are very bad teams. I don't think they played particularly well against Oklahoma City. They missed a lot of easy shots, I thought, guys other than Russell Westbrook. The formula has to be defense, getting out on the break, and scoring as many points as possible in transition. They can and should be a little bit better offensively, but the offensive numbers are truly atrocious. I mean, let's not mince words. I did some research, and they are 30th in field goal percentage.
By the way, that's dead last.
Yes, there are 30 teams in the NBA.
Yes, just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes, 28th in points scored per possession, which is called offensive rating or offensive efficiency for the
Third to last.
Well, okay, but offensive rating or offensive efficiency is the way analytical basketball experts refer to that set. It's essentially just points per possession.
Points per shot.
No, per possession.
Oh, per possession. Okay. Well, they're also third to last in points per shot.
Well, great work on your part. Thanks for showing me up. That's why you're the talent and I'm the schlub sitting next to you. 25th in free throws attempted. 28th in free throw percentage. 23rd in three-point field goal percentage, none of which will get this done for them.
Also last in the NBA in points per game, at just 92 points per game.
True, and I don't put as much stock into that statistic as offensive rating, because anything could, if you have a team that consistently forces opposing offenses to go late in the shot clock, shoot late in the shot clock, you're not going to score as many points. But your point is valid. As Scott Skiles would often answer questions, your point is valid. You make sense.
Well, the team
don't be too tough on yourself.
The free throw percentage is incredibly concerning. 28th in free throw percentage as well. Perimeter shooting has been a challenge, and I think that's what's prompted some people to be concerned about the shooting as a whole on this team. So we go to our next Twitter question here. It says, it's from Mike Wakefield. How soon will the Magic blow this team up and trade for some shooters? I think it's pretty obvious to people out there this team has not been great at shooting the ball.
Well, the team needs a scorer in the worst way. They need someone who can get a bucket at a time when nothing else is working. And that there's not a single team in the league, with the possible exception of Golden State, that doesn't have the offense falter at least once in a game. Right? Now, but the Magic's offense falters many times during games, and they don't have someone they can just dump the ball off to and say, go to work.
Get a bucket.
Get a bucket. And that's a problem. That's one of the reasons why they had some initial interest with Jamal Crawford at the start of, almost at the start of free agency. Now, contrary to a report at Basketball Insiders, Magic never met with Jamal Crawford because they traded for Jody Meeks several days before that.
Okay.
They did reach out to Jamal Crawford, but they never went through on a meeting because they wound up getting a second surgery for it. But the question from Mr. Wakefield, and thank you, Mr. Wakefield, I'll thank you profusely since my talented partner here refuses to thank anybody for anything. I think it's probably too early for them to make a move, but one of the dates I would circle on the calendar is December 15th, which is the first day where a player who has been signed to a free agent contract during the offseason can be traded. And the Magic may need to make a move there to give this offense a jump start. No question.
And we'll get to that. We'll come back at the end and talk about some of the possibilities and what could potentially happen for the Magic in the trade market. And we talked about the offensive concerns with this team. This team also ranks 23rd in offensive rebounds allowed, 25th in rebound differential. While they're a top 10 team in blocks, dead last in the NBA in steals. The team has been pretty good on defense at times, but not as dominant as a defense as I think this team thought they could be. I think Serge Ibaka comes in, Bismack Biyombo, Aaron Gordon, a pretty solid defensive player. There's an expectation that the front line would be among the best, if not the best in the league. And while the defense has contributed to the wins that they have, has not been as good, I think, as expected to this point.
Exactly.
And Aaron Gordon last night post-game mentioned, you'd fight for stop after stop after stop. but when you're not watching the ball go into the bucket on offense, it wears you down over time.
No, I think that was more. I think that was more Vooch. I think that was Nikola Vucevic saying that. But again, the point is valid. I think that's an issue that this team's offensive struggles have certainly at times bled into the defense. Now, maybe the defense is getting better. Tough to tell considering the competition that they faced. You can't really point to what happens against an Anthony Davis-less, L-E-S-S, Pelicans team as a sign of progress. You just can't.
Yeah.
And as we said, they don't have Drew Holiday either or Tyreek Evans. Now you could say maybe the Pelicans are better off not having Tyreek Evans, but we digress. There's a lot to be concerned about.
This next question we'll go to on Twitter is pretty similar to some of the other ones, but we definitely want to take the time to read it and to thank Chuck, who asked, serious question, what direction is this team going in?
Right now, not a pleasant one. The odd thing is they're actually starting to play a little bit better. And right now it would be tough for an objective observer to say they are making clear progress. Maybe they are. Defensively, again, tough to tell. I'd like to elaborate on the question you asked before. You're right, the defense has not played well. Serge Ibaka has not been the defensive force that he had been billed to be, which is a deep concern. Because whether you like Victor Oladipo or not, Victor Oladipo certainly was, and I hate to use the word again, an asset. Domantas Sabonis, or the 11th overall pick, was and is an asset. And if Serge Ibaka is not a defensive presence, and he's been all right, but he hasn't been great, and they need great from him.
And let's talk about some of the individual performances from these players. You talked about Ibaka, 1.2 blocks a game. That's the lowest of his career, even though it's relatively small sample size. 6.5 rebounds a game. That's the lowest average of his career. His play has been up and down. Interestingly, his three-point percentage at this point is the highest it's been in his career.
He's been superb from three-point range. Difficult to find any fault with that. But what amazes me is that he seems, I wouldn't use the word immobile, but I've written this in 2 articles, and I've got to stop going to the well now. But it does seem at times that his feet are crazy glued to the court, in the sense that he may
compared to
he
what
may
we
go
saw in
vertical
Oklahoma City for some time.
Well, where he was a dynamic, athletic player, here in Orlando so far he has not been a player who's when that's Nikola Vucevic, who also is not a high flyer on defense, but they expect Ibaka to be able to block shots. He had a 4-block game against Oklahoma City. He looked vintage Ibaka. But why isn't that occurring more often? Maybe he's getting used to a new system. Maybe he's getting used to being needed on both ends of the court. All valid possibilities, and yet the season moves on, and the Magic need to make progress. And for them to make progress, he's just one of many people who need to produce.
Yeah, well, and he's in a contract year, so I mean, you would expect maybe the best of a player, any player in a contract year. We saw pictures of Nick Vucevic there earlier. He's been in a shooting slump all year, but 10.8 points per game, that's the points average of his career since his rookie year. 42.8% field goal percentage, definitely the lowest of his career. His free throw percentage is stunning, 44% for a free throw shooter who's been in the 70s for his career. He's shot 10 for 44 field goals over the last 4 games, 5 points per game during that stretch.
And he doesn't shoot many free throws either.
Right.
All problems, and he's the first to admit he's in a slump. He went through a 5 for 32 stretch against Utah, Oklahoma City, Indiana. Last night, I think he was 5 for 12.
Sounds right.
Thank you. What's going on there? I can offer a bunch of theories. I think certainly he's now adjusting to a person who is his 4th coach in 5 seasons. That's a problem. Maybe they're not gelling as to maybe he's not going to spots where he needs to be, but the numbers also show that he's not posting up as much as he used to. He's moving out of the paint more often than he's used to. He's a very good mid-range shooter, although he hasn't shown it this year. But I would advise, all other things equal, I'd advise him to get back on the block and try and accomplish some things there, because he's a good low post scorer. He can accomplish a lot of things there, and I think at times he too often defaults to mid-range jumpers, which is a feast or famine proposition. At least if you're down low, you might be able to get fouled.
Right.
Or at least then you're in offensive rebounding position. If you miss a mid-range jump, I mean, I've seen you play. If you miss a mid-range jumper, you're not helping your team, Charles.
It's true. Let's talk about Aaron Gordon.
Yeah.
Team wants him to be a 3. There's a lot of talk preseason about how he was going to get his minutes at the 3, playing less at the 4. Even Frank Vogel made some comparisons to Paul George, but he's not Paul George. In fact, he's a career 29% three-point shooter, and even though there's been some mild improvements in his perimeter shooting this year, still really not high enough to be an effective 3 in a league that values perimeter shooting. Not only his lack of perimeter shooting at that position, but I'd say also the 3 is where you like to get some of your playmaking from as well, and Aaron Gordon's not necessarily a playmaker off the dribble. It really relies on others to create shots for him, and I feel like I think that contributes to the problems that this team is having on offense.
I can't add to what you said. You're right. I'm going to try to add what you said.
Okay, good.
He's probably miscast as a 3 right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a 3, you don't have to be a playmaker. I mean, Tony Allen's a 3, and although he doesn't play 35 minutes a game, he's a top-level defender, which is who Aaron Gordon can be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a playmaker at the 3 if you have playmakers at the 1 and the 2.
Right.
Yeah, and the Magic don't quite have that. Now, I have seen some glimmers of hope from Aaron Gordon, no question. I think his pull-up jumper is better. I've seen him make some good passes. He had some nice drives to the rim. But right now, for him to be most effective, I think he needs to cut with conviction. I think he needs to clean the glass. I think he needs to scoop up some boards, offensive and defensive. I think that's where he's best right now, and he's making some progress, but right now he's not where the team quite needs him to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the team wouldn't need so much from him in those areas if they were getting it from the 1 and the 2. So let's talk about the starting point guard and starting shooting guard, Elfrid Payton and Evan Fournier. Payton's perimeter shooting might be the biggest hindrance for the offense, in my opinion. 21% from three-point range this year. And I think we have to keep pointing out this is an era where perimeter shooting is key in the league. The teams that can shoot from the perimeter seem to be the teams that have the most success. Only took 1 3-pointer a game for most of his career. He's taken 3 a game this season, 21%, like I said. His turnovers are down, but his assists are also down a little bit. And you look at Evan Fournier, who's averaging a career high in points per game, but his three-point percentage is at a career low, and he's really struggled to get his own shot, especially off the dribble. And I think at times it seems like he's forcing shots, perhaps believing that at times the only wing player that can shoot it is pretty well, so maybe he feels like he needs to get more shots up. But those two so far this year, I think, have been a little bit of a disappointment as well.
True, all true. I think Evan Fournier has not said it. I think he's had a little bit of a problem with his shooting wrist. I think that's you can see that he has a little band around his wrist during games. Mm-hmm. I think that's a minor issue. Certainly nothing that he would ever use as an excuse. What you said is valid, that when you have a person who has the ball in his hands who other teams want to shoot threes, that's an issue.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you never take threes, then the teams will always sag off you. So these are issues that the team has, no question about it. And the team does not have much balance offensively. It's a severe problem. And recently, over the last several games, Frank Vogel has started Jeff Green at the 3 instead of Aaron Gordon. Offensively, Jeff Green hasn't brought much to the table, except that he's taken fewer bad shots than Aaron Gordon. And if I had some time on my hands And if we had a big research team, maybe you and I want to do this over the weekend, we could pour through every Magic play-by-play and determine what the opponent's field goal percentage is after a Magic miss and break it down by which Magic player is missing. I would be very interested to see which players have the worst opponent field goal percentage immediately following their miss. And I'm not talking about who they defend, I'm talking about the team as a whole.
Right.
That would be a fascinating
Perhaps
statistic.
shows some frustration from the team as a whole with the types of shots that are be taken by a certain player.
That's what I'm. Well, not a certain player, but maybe from Aaron Gordon and Elfrid Payton, because that seems to be an undercurrent that I'm kind of gathering, but I have no statistical data. I mean, I could see it in games, and I could hear it in some of the comments. Where if Vucevic says after a game, guys have to learn their roles, and I'm paraphrasing Vucevic now, but he would say, the Magic have too many players who are taking too many bad shots. He said it after last night's win, and he's right. And that's one of the issues the team has to solve. And yet, if you're the coach, you can't go up to a guy. I mean, you could, but if you were to go up to a guy and say, "Don't shoot, don't shoot," you destroy the guy's confidence. That's one of the many difficult parts about coaching, and that's one of the issues Frank Vogel faces.
You mentioned Frank Vogel had inserted Jeff Green in the starting lineup to replace Eric Gordon a number of games ago, and it's clear to see what he was trying to do there. I mean, Gordon and Payton together in the offense with their limited shooting ability has been tough. So you go with Jeff Green, who's a little bit better of a shooter, but not a great three-point shooter himself. 34% for his career, and he's shooting a career low 27% from three this year. And he does have a little bit of a reputation for being inconsistent, but can get hot at times. But even though he scored in double figures for the first 6 games this year, only once since. And since he's gone into the starting lineup, his numbers have gone down, including an 0 for 9 game against the Pelicans last night with no points.
I think he's somewhat, yes, he said today after the Magic's practice that he's just not hitting shots, and he's frustrated by it. And to his credit, he's frustrated by it. A lot of the guys are frustrated with their own individual play. I think he's also dealing with something else. Moving into the first unit, he is deferring quite a bit. And yet and at the same time he's undergoing a slump. So what can he do? Darned if he does, darned if he doesn't. How's that using PG language?
Well, let's one more player I want to talk about, and then we'll move on. We'll talk about some questions that people have on Twitter about trades. But the last person I want to talk about is Mario Hezonia. Very popular topic amongst fans. Last 4 games, 3 DNPs and an 0 for 5 game against the Pacers. He's shooting 17% from 3 for the season. And it's been a little bit of a disastrous year so far for Hezonia.
True, I think you're correct. He's fallen out of the rotation entirely, at least for the short term. Frank Vogel says this is more of a short-term move.
Rudash has been playing more, and you would assume it's his minutes.
Yes, but they're different roles. I mean, one guy's not getting swapped out for the other. I think that Vogel saw for 2 things happen there, for sure. One, he did indeed want to surround Elfrid Payton and Aaron Gordon with more veterans together. I mean, it's almost like if there's a critical mass of youth, it was hurting the Magic. And so they can't really sit Elfrid and they can't really sit Aaron Gordon. And that means bad things for Mario Hezonia. But 2, Hezonia's struggling on both ends of the court, and Frank Vogel was correct in the sense that the best way to teach a young player is to hold him accountable. When you stop making mistakes, your time increases. Now, that was Scott Skiles' opinion. That's the way a lot of veteran coaches think. And you know why they think that way?
And why do they think
Because that's the way to do things. The right way to do things. And that's how you teach someone. If I'm writing, I'm going to draw a silly parallel to myself. If I keep writing ungrammatical sentences like one I just spoke, you have old Robbins write fewer articles until he gets his act together. I don't. So that's what I think is also going on there, and I think that's what you need to do with young guys. Now, he's still only 21 years old. He still has a world of talent. It's now on to Frank Vogel to develop him.
And Frank Vogel's tone has changed. I've noticed post game. He's gone from
coach to rip into guys after a game, and look, he's also the coach, and the coach bears responsibility for the way the team plays. So I understand his approach to games after the team stinks, and he has said at times, he said after the Indiana game he was very, very disappointed with the team's performance.
That's questionable. All right, let's go back to Twitter. We move on. We went through all the players. We talk about some of the struggles that they've had so far, and now it's led people to start asking questions. I totally skipped this question. I'm sorry. This is a question from earlier about Elfrid Payton. Let's address this and move on. Can the offense succeed with Payton unable to run the pick and roll or pick and pop? He couldn't do it with Fry, is his assessment. Your thoughts on that, Josh?
Thank you, Reckless Cognition.
Yes, thank you, Reckless Cognition, who is a loyal tweeter and a loyal viewer of this webcast, and we thank you for your grand support of this show. We appreciate it.
His thoughts were that he doesn't think Payton runs pick and roll very well.
Fair point. One of the issues there may be that he's not able to hit that he doesn't consistently hit a 15-foot jumper. That said, are any of the big men rolling to the hoop? I mean, how often does Nikola Vucevic roll to the hoop?
Yeah.
How often has Serge Ibaka rolled to the hoop? Bismack Biyombo
Poppers.
does roll, but sometimes he has some difficulty catching the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Tough to compare, and certainly Channing Frye almost never rolled to the hoop. So
Right.
it's not like we're talking about a point guard who's working with Karl Malone. Okay, so that's it. Again, these are all issues. Look, there's a theme that keeps cropping up here. Magic don't have enough two-way players.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not really talking about the pick and roll here. I'm talking about players who can do a lot of things very well. And to be an elite level team, you need more than just one or two superstars. You need a lot of people who surround them who are two-way players. And if you have no superstars, you better have a whole bunch of two-way players. And how many Magic players at this moment have played like two-way players this season?
It's a great point. There's a lot of players on this Magic have some pretty unique skills, are really talented players and maybe good at one or two things, but a lot of the players who are talented on offense aren't so much on defense and vice versa. So I think that's a great point. All right, so getting back to Twitter, let's go to Justin's question here. And this is a question that you see a lot popping up on Twitter because when the team struggles, people point to the general manager. But
may I interject, please?
Sure.
What is the deal with that avatar?
I was curious about that myself. I'm not entirely sure. Looks like a shadow.
Justin, please DM Charles to explain what's going on there. But thank you for your support and your question. There we go. I don't know what the deal is.
But he wants to know if the Magic take a step back this year, is Hennigan out? And I guess maybe that depends on the size of the step, and kind of how things play out for the rest of the year and the circumstances.
All true, and I think Rob Hennigan will have his entire record evaluated at the end of the year, either positively or negatively. If they miss the playoffs by a wide margin, then I think the DeVos family will look and see what's occurred there. It's been 4 years. It'd be one thing if they were clearly on the precipice of doing great things, but they're not. And can they improve this year? Sure they can. No question. Right now, the way they're playing, I don't see it occurring, but it could happen. And they're 12 games in. They need to show improvement.
Last Twitter question. Let's go to it, Jordan. It's from Scott Hansen. And when the Magic struggle, when any team struggles, I think the go-to thing for a fan to maybe make themselves feel a little bit better is to talk about possibilities. No matter how crazy they might be, you want to scour the league, look at other players that might be available in a trade. And DeMarcus Cousins from Sacramento Kings is a player that there's been some troubles out there and comes up in trade rumors every year. And the question Scott has is, could the Magic do anything to get him, and would they take that risk? Would DeMarcus Cousins, obviously being a little bit of a malcontent, has a little bit of a reputation for how he is, and the Magic have shied away from players like that in the past. And there's a belief last year when there was a potential trade being discussed about Cousins that it's not the type of player the Magic would pursue.
And to clarify, when you say was discussed, I mean discussed in rumors, not,
Right, okay.
discussed by the team.
Sure.
I'd be shocked if the Magic were to ever even entertain the possibility of adding DeMarcus Cousins, because he is a malcontent, and he's a tremendous player. It's such a shame that someone who is such a great talent is so difficult to be a teammate of. Now, in Sacramento's game here in Orlando, you could see it with the naked eye. Every single mistake Sacramento Kings players made during the game evoked terrible body language from Cousins. There was one play where he and a teammate both went for the same rebound at the Magic's end of the court near the baseline. Ball went over the baseline, out of bounds. Some frustration is inevitable in a competitive sport, of course, but when that happens after almost every miscue, as it seemed to do in the fourth quarter and parts of the third quarter and even in the first half, you cannot be a leader. And for his sake, I wish that weren't the case, because he could be one of the top 5 players of his generation.
However,
Yeah.
if you're a team that's struggling and you look at DeMarcus Cousins, who is probably the best big man in the league, arguably the best center in the league, a general manager or a front office could convince themselves that what you're seeing out of DeMarcus Cousins is a result of the environment that he's in now. Perhaps come to our team can win, maybe he's a different person. You could see front offices convincing themselves of that.
Well, it's not ludicrous. He was on the gold medal team in 2016, and Mike Krzyzewski had no qualms. Well, maybe he had some qualms, but Krzyzewski and Jerry Colangelo had him on the team, and he was great there. So, but if he were to come to the Magic, he would be the unquestioned best player, and he wouldn't be around anyone who's won a title. The Magic don't have a guy who's won a title.
Probably wouldn't be much different than his current situation.
That's my guess. I mean, I think if you were to have him, say, be a teammate of Dwayne Wade's, where Dwayne Wade was the team leader, but DeMarcus Cousins was the best player, I think Cousins would probably be very good, or at least had the opportunity to be. So that's the issue, and now he would drastically upgrade the talent level, because, as I said, I think he's one of the 3 or 4 most talented people in the league, without question.
Well, we could talk about...
He's the David Whitley of the NBA, except David Whitley is always cheerful, and I've never seen him have any bad body language. But
this is true. We could talk about trades all day. I mean, I think Magic fans would, the more the Magic struggle, would love to talk about the possibilities and the what-ifs more than they would like to talk about the current situation. But let's talk about the upcoming games. Magic have 3 games in the next week. We'll go through these really quickly. Saturday at the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas is struggling as well, 2-8. And I think that's one thing about the Magic right now, is that the schedule is pretty light early in the season, the way it's worked out for them. Opportunity to win some games and get back to 500. Dallas, Dirk Nowitzki has been out with an Achilles injury. His status for this weekend's game is unknown at this time.
Correct, and that game will be here at Amway Center, and if it isn't, I'm in trouble because I haven't booked the flight there.
But I definitely wrote at Dallas, but you're right. The game is at home. My apologies.
And so,
all right, so Dirk is questionable still.
So far as I know, and you know what? That's a game the Magic should win, with or without Dirk, because they played the night before, Friday night, 8:30 Eastern. Any NBA player and coach will tell you that going west to east, losing an hour in time zones on a back-to-back is one of the toughest things they do. And not only are they not playing at 8 Eastern, they're playing at 8:30 Eastern. That's a problem for the Mavericks.
Well, much like the game against the Pelicans last night, it's a similar type team. A team that has had some injuries to some star players, may not be playing in the game. A game the Magic should win at home, and we saw how things went last night. The difference is Dallas has Harrison Barnes, who's been playing pretty well so far this year, and they do have a score.
Yeah, let me not overstate things. A Dallas Mavericks team without Dirk Nowitzki is far superior to a New Orleans Pelicans team without Anthony Davis, without Drew Holiday, without Tyreek Evans. So it's would not be as what one would think is an easy of a game, but it still would be a game the Magic should win. I mean, you should win on your home court for the most part. And when you're playing a team on the second night of it back-to-back, coming east, it's an issue. Yes, I think that's a game the Magic ought to win.
The Magic will play at Milwaukee on Monday, and will return home to play Phoenix on Wednesday. Milwaukee 5-5, Phoenix 3-9. Phoenix is a team that has some exciting young players, and the Magic lost to Phoenix at home last year, a pretty rough loss. And with Jabari Parker and Antetokounmpo playing as well as he's been playing, did I get that pretty good? Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Well, see, this
Close.
is why you are truly one of the great talents in Central Florida broadcasting, and you are, whether you believe it or not.
Let's talk about the opponents, the Bucks and the Suns.
The Bucks are going to be a tough team, even though they have a negligible home court advantage. They're tough because they have a lot of athleticism. Giannis see what I did there? Only use the first name. Antetokounmpo.
Greek freak.
Well, yeah, I don't like that nickname so much, but he's a hybrid player to the extreme, kind of a jack of all trades, master of almost none, except he's a terror in transition. And if the Magic have a whole bunch of turnovers, he'll play. So, and if Jabari Parker starts to get rolling, as he has the talent to do, that's going to be a tough game to win.
Well, we talked about the Magic and the struggles, where they rank in the NBA offensively, and as bad as things seem to be with this team so far, the Magic will have an opportunity to play two teams with losing records and one team that's right at 500. If the Magic can win those 3 games, the Magic could enter the following week with a winning record. So things certainly could be a lot worse.
True. The game against the Pelicans started a stretch which they'll play 5 of 6 teams. It's 5 of 6 games at home. Now, again, Amway Center is a rotten home court advantage. It just is. But
at times you can hear a pin drop in the middle of a game.
That's true. And part of that is the team, but a large part of that is the fans. But if you're at home, you should win those games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a real opportunity for this team that's struggling to get things on track before the schedule gets tougher. And if you don't see that, there's a lot of reason for concern as they enter December.
Correct. I mean, especially if this team had been exactly the same from last year, yes. There will always be, at least up until maybe January 1st, the potential excuse that 9 new players or new coaching staff. That's nothing to sneeze at, but at some point the team has got to turn a corner.
All right. Well, we'll sign off here. On Saturday, the Magic will play against the Dallas Mavericks at home. For coverage of that, you'll want to check out what Josh writes about it.
You.
Let me quickly just jump in here, fellas.
Jordan has.
Thank you, Jordan.
Again, we are streaming live on Facebook on the what is it? It's Orlando Magic on OrlandoSentinel.com. So I want to thank our viewers there. Shout out to Justin Candelora. I don't know. This is a very kind of a vague comment, so I wonder if maybe you guys have a response to it. Justin says they're so much better than last year. So, I mean, in terms of the team, in terms of what was going on last year, what do you think?
Well, I think the expectation for this team is that they would be better, spending $110 million, the top 10 payroll in the NBA, and certainly with name recognition with players, you would think that the Magic are better. But statistically, I don't know how you could be better than, or not be better than last in the NBA, which is what the Magic are in a lot of these offensive categories thus far.
I thought the team at this point last year was better than the team at this point this year.
And many forget the Magic maybe the best stretch under Rob Hennigan was the early part of last season.
They began the year in 19-13 until things started to collapse right on or around December 30th. But look at how that turned out. It turned out terribly. The 35-57 record. Is it possible that things invert this time? It could happen. Certainly, they have more veterans. I think this team has more talent than last year's team. However, they have yet to really show it. I'll be interested to see how they fare the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So again, versus Dallas on Saturday. We thank you so much for watching. We've been live here on Facebook and OrlandoSentinel.com. We do Orlando Magic now every Thursday afternoon. So come back here next week for another show.
How are we doing with locating a sponsor? Well, actually, you're not working on me. I don't know if anyone is,
well,
but
I would assume nobody is. But
I find that difficult to believe.
Well,
I really do.
Perhaps
this is high-quality programming.
We'll leave here and we'll walk upstairs to the advertising department and get to the bottom of that.
Really, we're breaking down a journalistic wall here that should remain rock-solid foundation in cement, separating us and them.
It's just an inquiry.
Now I just happened to get a message to my phone. Josh Robbins, you've been fired for asking about sponsorship. But I love sparkling water, and I'm not saying I want free sparkling water, but I would just be, because I would not accept it, but I'd be tickled.
Or strawberry pops.
No, I don't eat those anymore. But
it'd be nice to just get the offer.
It would be nice. Yes, it would be nice
That's
just to be wanted,
Yeah.
and to be somehow affiliated with, say, a sparkling water company. In other words, a seltzer company, a carbonated, a club soda beverage company. I would love that. I would love that. I would. That would
be a conversation for another time about your obsession with sparkling water.
That would be a delightful thing for me, and I guess I'm pathetic. I mean, if that's what makes me happy.
Does it matter that I don't like sparkling water?
This is definitely material for another show.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching, and thank you for well, that's your job to. Yeah.
I'll do the signing off. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah. Pardon me. I'm totally out of sorts.
For Josh Robbins, I'm Charles King. Thanks also to Jordan Crumbine. We'll see you next Thursday.